My name is Thomas Tonatiuh Lopez Jr. My mother is Waterwoman Sharon Dominguez, and my father is Sundance Chief Thomas Lopez Sr. I am a part of a group called the International Indigenous Youth Council, and we are a grassroots organization that started at Standing Rock at the resistance camp Osheti Shakoi against the Dakota Access Pipeline. My parents were involved in the Chicano and the American Indian movements in the 1960s. And in the 1970s. My parents were supply runners for Wounded Knee, and they have always instilled in me the importance of using the voice that you have and making sure that our voice is heard, because for a very long time our voices weren't heard and we were silenced. And so ever since I was young, my parents have always taken me to runs and marches and rallies, and so I've always been really exposed to stuff like this. Finally, in August, I was at one of our ceremonies, our main New Year ceremony, and all of the buzz at Sundance was Standing Rock. All of my cousins were talking about how they were going to Standing Rock and how I needed to go with them, and that it was really important that I was there. And they didn't know what was up there, but they knew that whatever it was really cool. And we had heard about the youth runners that had run from Standing Rock to Washington, D.C. So the reason why the resistance started was because the Dakota Access Pipeline was originally supposed to cut through a part of North Dakota that is about 10 or 15 miles upstream from Bismarck, North Dakota. Bismarck, North Dakota is a predominantly white, middle-class, upper-class community. That's town, city. Well, of course, the people of Bismarck didn't want that, so they asked the pipeline route be rerouted. So what they did was move the pipeline 50, 60 miles downstream, which is about 10 miles upstream from the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation. So this land that they're going through is what's called ceded territory. That means that the original treaty that America signed, with the Great Sioux Nation, stated that this X amount of land belongs to the Great Sioux Nation. They are a sovereign nation. They have their own government, they have their own leaders, and there's nothing that the U.S. can come in and stop them from doing, because they are their own country. Well, as time goes on and as history knows it, the American government slowly broke those treaties, taking off chunks and chunks and chunks of the Great Sioux Nation and other tribes, of course, that are around the U.S. So this particular land is land that was seized by the government and isn't being used, but is still according to the which is still according to the Fort Laramie Treaty, that this land belongs to the Lakota people. This land is so sacred to us because so many of our ancestors are buried there. If you walk in that area, you'll see cemeteries, miles of rocks all facing east. And in this particular part of the Great Sioux Nation, these Hunkpapa people, they pray to the east. They start their prayer in the east. Whereas the Shishangu Oyate, we start our prayer in the west, to the thunder beings. And so this pipeline is literally going over our auntie's son, where her son is buried. Her father, her mother, her brothers and sisters are all buried there, and literally right on top of them, there's going to be a pipeline. What people need to understand is that majority of indigenous cultures are centered around water. Water is life. Without water, nothing can be done. Nothing would live, nothing would grow, there would be no animals, there would be nothing. So our whole society, our civilizations are based on water. The Mexica and the Aztec people, built an entire city of gold on water, fresh water. And so when you see the water being put at risk, you start to see all these other factors come into play: social, political, environmental, sexual. All these different aspects start popping up because everything that we do is based on that. And so we're not only looking at an environmental issue, we're looking at a political issue because our sovereign rights are being broken. Treaties that were signed by the government are being completely looked aside. Corporations are being held above human life. It's not a matter of if this pipeline breaks. It's a matter of when this pipeline breaks. North Dakota is already the number one state for oil spills in the U.S. And I believe that is in the U.S. and Canada. They are just very good at covering it up. They don't go in and clean up these communities. And if you go on YouTube or go on Google and type in Enbridge lies or DAPL lies, you'll see a man that actually used to work for these oil companies completely exposing what they do. They don't clean up these communities, they cover it up to make sure that no one knows about it. And so there's already been, in the past year alone in North Dakota, I can name, from just what I've read and known, over 6 oil spills reported. And so there's already oil being leaked into our rivers. There's already oil being leaked into our lands and into the it goes past the topsoil, and once it gets into the ground, that those aquifers. It's October 27th. No, it's November 27th, I believe. And I had just gotten out of a meeting. I was walking back to our yurt, which is we had 3 different camps. Our camps, somehow the youth council got the camp that was farthest north, the camp that was farthest south, and the camp that was farthest east. So we had a perimeter somehow, and we had what Red Warrior called a tactical advantage. They're so funny. And so I actually specifically was camped at our north camp. And it was the camp that was closest to Backwater Bridge, where the barricade that the military had put up was. So I was walking back, and this was like a sundown, around like 5, when I started to notice a lot of people walking towards Backwater Bridge. We had made it very clear to people that if you don't have permission to go to Backwater Bridge, you're not allowed there. Because people were trying to go over there to get their pictures with the police. They get the police all riled up, they get a picture, and then they leave, and it's pointless. And so I noticed that, and we started telling people, like, you need to come back. Well, then we started hearing the police announce all this stuff to them. So as it started to get darker and darker, we began to hear the gunshots and the explosions, and all of a sudden there weren't just 1 helicopter in the air, there was 3. And then we went up there, and it was something that I didn't want to be a part of. It was an action that was going violent, and it was getting dangerous, and it was something that I didn't want to live with, seeing in my head over and over again for the rest of my life. So I gathered the youth council, and I told them, guys, if you don't have any business over there, I just suggest that you stay here, because it's unsafe. It's just not safe for us to be there. They were shooting people with rubber bullets. They had these, it's called a non-lethal grenade. They're very lethal. They were macing us like usual. And then this was actually the first night where they used the very water that we were protecting against us. In North Dakota during the winter, you can see temperatures get as low as -60. This night, I would say it was about -20 to -25. And they began spraying people with water. They put some type of agent in the water that made everything freeze almost instantly. Even though I didn't go to the camp, I go to the action. I physically get into the mix of it. I heard that a few of our youth council members had been shot, and that one of them had had a severe seizure, and that they needed someone to go because they wanted to get into the hospital, but he wouldn't go. So I, being one of the youth council mentors and leaders, I went, and what I saw in that area, I will never forget. It will pretty much haunt me for the rest of my life. It was war. We were in the middle of war. There was blood everywhere. There were people missing limbs. There were people missing eyes. There was a man with a hole in his head, and you could see his skull. You could see it, and the medics and the doctors screaming, "We have a bleeder. Get him to where the bleeders are at. Okay, we have broken limbs. Take them over there." And seeing people being brought in on makeshift stretchers, looking dead, like they're dead, frozen, because their icicles coming off their nose, their eyelashes, everything was just frozen, and the blood just frozen. And to see that and then not be able to react because you have something that you have to do and you have people that are looking at you. One thing that a lot of people don't know about what was so special about Standing Rock was this was the first time in over 200 years that this many tribes, more than half of the American tribes and also indigenous tribes from around the world came together for the first time in over 200 years. And so this is something that hasn't happened for us in a very long time, but it's in our blood memory. So what we did by doing this at Standing Rock was awaken the indigenous soul. We reminded the indigenous people of who they really were and the strength that we actually have behind us, and that this is our calling. This is what we were meant to be doing. This is our land, and we must protect it with everything. We've already lost so much. We can't lose anymore. We're earth protectors, and this is our job. And so to know that the government has militarized the police force to continue to hold not only indigenous people down, but people of color and people of marginalized communities down, it's very disturbing, and it should alarm the world, because this is exactly what our founding fathers of America didn't want to happen, and it's happened. Our government isn't run by people, it's run by corporations. It's run by who has the biggest wallet and who's willing to write the best check. The best thing that you can do to support any indigenous community or Standing Rock itself is educate yourself, and really make sure that the sources that you're getting your information from are reliable ones. You can also go into our divestment campaign, where you can go to www.divestdapple.org, and you can find out all the ways that you can divest from Wells Fargo, Citibank, and a number of other banks that are supporting and funding the Dakota Access Pipeline. Another thing that you can do, especially as I am speaking specifically towards our white allies, is use your privilege and the platform that you're born with to uplift and bring up people of color. Sometimes it's okay to get off of your platform and allow someone else to get on. And I think that that's something, I get that question a lot from a lot of white people, is how can we help? And my best advice to you and to my white allies is to step back and allow the people of color and the marginalized communities to come forward.